This conference will now be recorded.
Yep. It is, according to Verizon, it's 9 o'clock. According to the 1 o'clock, it's 9:05. Another clock, it's 8:45. 8:59. So we'll go with Verizon. Good morning, everybody. It's wonderful to see you all again. Our meeting for May 27th of the Tampa Bay Estuary Program Policy Board meeting. Let's get started. Jessica, roll call.
Morning, Chair Justin.
Here.
Vice Chair White.
Here.
Commissioner Ostenbridge.
Here.
Commissioner Mariano.
Here.
Councilmember Montanari.
Here.
Alex Awad for Councilmember Hurtak.
Here.
Councilmember Beckman. Here. Kelly Boatwright. Dr. Hogarth.
Here.
Tom McGill. We do have a quorum, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Jessica. Just as a mention for those wondering, we don't have a mask mandate in this building or for this meeting, but the CDC guidelines have changed in the recent week as far as rating our area as high. So masks are recommended, obviously not required. And as you're going through your daily life, you're going to find people are in their 5-day or 10-day window post-COVID where masks are recommended anyway, regardless of the transmission rate in the area. So I just want to make that note. First on our item is approval of changes to agenda. We have additions and some notes, but we have actual changes, correct? There's updated agenda items, 3 updated agenda items, and new agenda items. That's complete. Perfect. Okay. All right. Oh, that's right. The new 13.1.
I'll move for approval change.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? So it passes unanimously. Item number 2, approval of minutes from the February policy board meeting. Are there notes or is there a motion to approve? Good motion.
Second.
And a second. All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? So it passes unanimously. Item 3, do we have any general citizen comments? We go to the order. All right, seeing none, we'll move right to item number 4, the 2019-2020 Golden Mangrove Award presentation. This is always an exciting time of the year. So sure, we'll take us away.
Yeah, just a little bit of background. The community advisory committee was outstanding Bay Mangrove Award that's funded through our Tampa Bay Environmental, our Tampa Bay Especially License Plate Department Act. And this year we have 2 recipients due to COVID and some of the delays in some of the projects. And she was going to give a little bit more background on their projects. And we have 3 presentations on those that are in attendance today.
Thanks, Ed. So if y'all want to come up here, please. So in early May, 8 of our community advisory members came together, as Ed said, to choose both the 2019 and the 2020 Golden Mangroves. So this is a prestigious award that is presented to the most outstanding Bay Mini grant from each grant cycle. So in order to determine the winner, the group reviewed over 25 project applications, reports, and deliverables, which is no easy feat for these volunteers. So they review projects based on the timeliness, so was the project completed in a timely manner, the level of community involvement, because that's a major component of the Bay Mini Grant program, is getting the community engaged in restoration. Repeatability, so is this project able to be repeated in the future? And then the positive impact to the watershed or estuary and the creativity of the project itself. So I'm not going to go too much into the details of the project. I'm going to let our special guests do that honor. So I can have Miss Marjorie Kavanaugh and Miss Nadine Nickerson. These are 2 longstanding CAC members, and they will be presenting the awards to the winner.
Good morning. Each year, as we embark on the award selection process, I think about the challenge. I volunteer, as do the other judges, because the projects represent a variety of visions for improvement of the Tampa Bay estuary and the willingness to work towards that goal. The 2019 Golden Mangrove Award recipient, the Friends of Crescent Lake, stewards of our urban lake, certainly exemplify that willingness. This community association in St. Petersburg has been dedicated to the restoration of Crescent Lake and Tampa Bay for approximately 15 years. Their grant proposal focused on selective plant removal, much of it from the water, thousands of pounds of it, and habitat restoration. We were impressed by their goals, by their partnerships with other community organizations, by their numerous volunteers, and their ability to overcome obstacles. Accepting the award are Lucy Camargo and Margaret Zack.
Yeah. Let's show it.
We're gonna do
Do you
a
see
big
it?
one after.
Well, thank you. This is a huge honor for us. Jim Bays, our president, was unable to be here today, but he asked me to express our immense gratitude and admiration for the Tampa Bay Estuary Program. It was just like Marjorie said, 15 years ago, 2007, when we had an idea. We were just a bunch of people, and we wanted to see Crescent Lake transformed from basically a bowl of water with grass around it into a wildlife habitat with improved water quality. At that time, the city of St. Petersburg was routinely spraying the lake, and then that would be followed with an algal bloom and a fish kill. Since then, we have had numerous grants from Tampa Bay Estuary with the support and the partnership of the city of St. Petersburg with Keep My Nose Beautiful. Stephanie Allington and Keep My Nose Beautiful has helped us in a tremendous way. I have some, notes. That year, so we've removed by now hundreds of tons of water lettuce, working together with the city to eliminate the need for the lake to be sprayed. You know, when we wrote our original grant, we all thought that we were gonna put these plants in the water and just watch them grow. We thought it would be like a Claude Monet painting and we would just be observers. But since then, we've had monthly cleanups plus additional cleanups. For instance, we have installed a water goat, and every time there's a rain event, volunteers comes out, collects everything, weighs everything, reports everything. We have worked together with Lake Watch since the very beginning. That means that we've had Lake Watch trained volunteers who collect water samples from 3 specific spots in the lake every month, send them to the University of Florida, their LIFIS, they're analyzed, the data is recorded, and we were able to determine in that year that our goal is actually happening, that the wildlife habitat that we have in the lake is actually helping to pick up nitrogen and phosphorus from the water, and also that the water lettuce that we remove is very significant. So we can see the trends. We removed almost 90,000 pounds of invasive plants, mostly water lettuce. And that's estimated to include, this is Jim Bay's hand here, 268 pounds of nitrogen and 89 pounds of phosphorus that otherwise would have been in the lake and then into Coffee Pot Bayou and the estuary. I remember when we wrote the first grant, we didn't realize at that time that we were part of Tampa Bay Estuary, but we thought we were just a lake.
The robust habitat supports tremendous wildlife. I don't know if you've come to see the white American pelicans during the winter. I think that year we counted 100 of them in the lake at one time. They're huge. They have a 9-foot wingspan. They eat all the time. And I believe that's an enormous testimony to the quality and the health of the lake now, that they can support these, voracious eaters over a long period of time. We enjoy important community support. We have spoken at several neighborhood association meetings, including the historic Uptown. One of our goals has been to replicate what we do or use what we do as a model, and now historic Uptown has worked with us to plant their shoreline with native plants, and then we help them with their volunteer events. Education, we're working with interns from Eckerd College. We also work with graduate students at USF St. Pete who actually use the data that they put together while working in Crescent Lake and from our Lake Watch program to write their thesis. So through our commitment and the support of our community, the neighborhoods, organizations like Keep Pinellas Beautiful, the city, and many others, but especially Tampa Bay Estuary Program, we have been able to continue and make this possible. And it is with enormous gratitude and admiration that I thank Tampa Bay Estuary Program and Margaret and I accept this award on behalf of Friends of Crescent Lake and now stewards of our urban lakes. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Nadine Nickerson. I'm a 15-plus year member of the Community Advisory Council, CAC. And during that time, I've had the privilege to be on the grant awarding committee. And for the past several years, I have been part of the Golden Mangrove subcommittee to select the outstanding award in a year for that. And I'm very happy to present to the Gulfport Recreation Center Rain Garden, the Golden Mangrove for what we call 2020. Of course, 2020, the year with the elephant in the room, that's still with us. But anyway, they persevered and set up a native plant garden within a rain catchment area to prevent runoff of the water that had just previously slid on down. And as we say in Tampa Bay, it all goes to the bay. We wanted to keep the bay healthy. So we have a fairly strict criteria, and each year we hone it and get it a little bit better. But the committee was unanimous in awarding this group to Diana and Teresa's group, that they really exemplified what a community spirit can do in taking a little bit of money. They only spent a little over $2,000 and was able to make a huge difference in Gulfport. I know Dana will talk about this, but she said people are always coming up to her and saying, well, what is this plant? How did you do this, et cetera? So it's an easily replicatable project that one could do even in your own yard to keep an area that has a non-permeable surface, and as the water comes off, you catch it, it drains, it becomes clean water, and we all benefit from that. So I thank them very much, and I'm so honored to award this to Dana and to April, sorry. The 2020 Golden Mangrove Award will get. Sure.
Thank you so much for having us and for this wonderful award. My name is Dana, and I'm going to be walking through just a little bit of what our rain garden has gone through in the last couple of years. Our site is this orange polygon that's actually directly in front of the parking lot for the recreation center. And this is such an ideal location for a project like this because of the amount of foot traffic from different types of folks coming for the skate park, to walk on the beach, to walk their dog. There's apartment complexes, Airbnbs, a neighborhood. So many people are right at this corner, and there used to just be this stormwater detention area there. So we worked along with the city of Gulfport to choose this site for our project, and this is what it looked like at the beginning. Due to your gracious funding, we were able to purchase both hardscaping and landscaping materials, and here are some of our native plants and our Florida pine straw mulch, which is pine needles. These plants are specially selected to thrive in this environment in a full sun, salt tolerant environment. These are mostly dune plants, and they can take all of that environment at that site really well, and they can also handle the inundation of the occasional flooding. We also couldn't have done this without people power. So this is from our first planting day. This includes folks from the Gulfport Teen Council, Florida Native Plant Society, and of course from our group. By accessing these other groups, we were able to share that experience with young teens who may have not had gardening experience before, and really intersperse them with experts on Florida native plants who were more than joyous to come out and put the plants in the ground with us. It's also really fun when the planting's happening. It happens so fast. We set up, and in 1 hour, we turn this into a garden. In 1 hour, we planted on the planting day because we had so many people show up. And it's just really lovely to see folks asking each other, hey, you know what this plant is? Oh, this grows in my yard. Oh, what? You know, they just have incredible conversations that really inspire a lot of curiosity while they're there working on the garden. It was hard to take photos because it was happening so fast. I'm not joking. In 1 hour, we went from dirt to garden. So subsequently, we have had many work days to come and do maintenance on our garden. And once again, those are always like very social, wonderful times where people come together and get to learn a lot about the project itself. And due to another grant that we received from the Tampa Bay Regional Planning Council, thank you, glad that we're here to also say thank you to them, we were able to install this really high quality educational sign to try to drive home the concepts that are really active in this location. You can stand at this sign and you can physically see the entire parking lot in front of you, and you can see Clam Bayou from where you're standing. So I really think it's a powerful place to really take in not only the beauty of the garden, but the impact that this really has on the stormwater coming from that parking lot, going right out to where you're going to go walk and see dolphins and manatees and enjoy the wildlife. And I really think that it's a really special spot to have a rain garden. And I'm really glad that we have this educational sign to help drive home those concepts. Of course, we also have our Tampa Bay Estuary Program license plate sign right next to it, so folks know that they can help projects like this. And right away, we have had so many plants blooming right off the bat. We have so much wildlife. In addition to filtering all of that water, these plants really sustain a lot of wildlife in an area that was just a monoculture of grass. This is the before and after of our site location. I think it is such a welcoming and beautiful spot that really draws people in. Every time I'm there to water plants, weed, do anything, every single time, someone will walk up to me and say, what is this? What is this project? And we'll say, oh, here's what it is, and here's the sign. And people are like, oh, I could put some of these in my yard. And like, it really happens. It's incredible to watch happen right in front of your eyes while you're watering plants. It's amazing. So thank you so much for funding our project. It was a pleasure and a joy to make happen. And we're so excited to watch the garden evolve and also network with other folks who want to make more gardens in the the future, which we have already been doing. We are in close contact with someone who's in this last grant cycle. We worked really closely together to help share that information that we learned in the process. So thank you very much.
Just want to express my thanks to you all as well. All these projects are functioning with the big program, small catalyst, big grant program, and fully funded details of our program. So if you don't have the start guarantees, there are purchasing fees that you're fee from the license places during the program. These projects directly when we have our calls this summer for the 2022 bacon grant and project will track work. Thank you.
If I could, I'd like to want to thank everyone on the committee for working to select our winners today. I wanted to recognize April Davis, the Gulfport City Council. Thank you for your leadership. We appreciate your work. And Dr. Hogarth, Dana is a graduate of USFCD, and she went through our leadership programming back when you were a chancellor there. So wanted you to see that point of pride for us as well.
Thank you very much.
Invite any policy board members that like to be in the picture. Yeah, absolutely. How do you want?
So good to see you.
Good go in the back.
You see Marjorie back there?
Yeah.
I actually can.
Okay, good.
Hold on.
Wait, so it's all.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, so next on our agenda this morning, item number 5, we have a presentation of Climate First Bank. So Sherwood.
Yeah, actually, virtually, we had Matt Miller, the vice president, and I believe Mangrove, CEO of First Bank, the topic that we had at prior board meeting in terms of pathway in which to Climate First Bank to align with our environmental initiatives as well as financial purposes, everything for us. But I wanted to provide an opportunity for Climate First Bank representatives to introduce themselves and provide a little bit of background.
Good morning. This is Matt with Climate First Bank. Ed, it's really hard to hear your mic online. Everyone else comes through clear. Can you hear us okay?
We can hear you.
Great. I'm actually going to have Ken LaRoe, our founder and CEO, talk just to not confuse the microphone. But thank you for having us today.
Good morning, everyone. My camera won't come on, so that's okay. I'm really pleased to be here. I'm really happy that you have considered us. We started the bank a year ago. Tuesday? This coming Tuesday, the 31st. So we'll be a year old. We're almost positive we're going to go over 200 million in assets in that first 12 months, which makes us the fastest growing new bank in America since 2017. And I just, knock on wood every day. I'm so blessed with the team that that I've got that joined me, and I heard a musician, I can't remember who it was, described as a 30-year overnight sensation, and that light bulb went off the other day, and I thought, oh my gosh, that's Climate First Bank. It's my 30 plus years in the business, building relationships, raising capital. But I think the biggest factor has been the climate crisis is a reality. And at least 50% of our country believes it and believes in it fervently. And we have had just a massive amount of customers come to us, fantastic talent that we were able to hire because of the values proposition. And I tell people I'm a rabid environmentalist, but I'm a rabid capitalist also. And I think the two have to go hand in hand. And part of that is the very real reality that all of us who are in the space need to support each other as much as possible, like any vibrant community anywhere. So again, I'm just honored that you guys would even consider us. We won't let you down if you do choose to go with us. And you will know where your money's sleeping at night. It's not going to a bank that's funding directly or indirectly the continuation of dirty energy and the status quo. That's, I think, about all I've got. If anybody has any questions.
But I think we're good.
Excellent. Well, again, thank you very much. Matt, did you want to add anything? Did I miss anything?
No, I appreciate your time today. And if you have any questions, maybe Jessica can share Ken and I's contact with everyone. Feel free to reach out with anything that you have to talk about.
Yeah, please do. And text is best for me. And if you have a pencil, it's 352-360-4445.
Thank you, everybody.
Very good. Thank you for your time this morning.
Thank you. Bye.
Yeah. All right. Moving on to our action items this morning. Item number 6. Yeah, approval of management board chair, vice chair, Mr. Sherwood.
Yeah, your places is the updated agenda item, the election for management board chair and vice chair was on last Friday. Somebody, our lady from the Nelson County Council representing the manager program back as the new chair, was elected as the new chair of the management board, and Doug Williams, welcome from the Wildlife Conservation Commission. Was elected as vice chair. As per our bylaws, the policy board.
Discussion or motion? To approve. We have a motion and a second. Further discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? So it passes unanimously. Item number 7, quarterly financial report.
Part of the packet on page 11 is our quarterly Q2, which is basically the first 6 months of our year 2022 growth plan activities. So just a couple of notes on that page 11. We were a little bit behind in terms of federal revenue, so we made that up in terms of other fees and contracts from other projects that we have on the grant program, other grants that we're bringing in the program. We're expecting membership fees to be actually we received the last membership fee past that level close the fiscal year. But at 6 months in, we're about 1.6 in revenue, a little bit behind what we expected from the initial program budget. One thing to note on the expense side, we are a little bit ahead in terms of our direct personnel expenses. That was due to a variety of reasons. We have the staff recognition as well as makeup and contributions to the FRS that I'll talk about in my executive director report. We're expecting actually to be below at the end of the year in terms of direct personnel services with the staff resignation. But I'll be happy to further talk about some of those expenses if needed. The other outstanding one to kind of mention is the other expenses. That is happy to answer any additional questions on the first 6 months of our financial report. So, yeah.
Question long. Staffing, taking care of social inflation. Do they get increased based on anything the state does? Got to keep staff. Got to staff. Do what they need to do. And then all you said.
Yeah, we had one staff member leave during this past quarter, our period role, resigned early March. We were, based on some of the major contributions that we had made, delaying hiring on new staff, and I'm good to bring forward 2 new staff this year and an additional one next year. Those salary and fringe costs are factored into our budget. Nine, and what we project in terms of staff compensation is about 3%, which is commensurate with what the other municipal governments have been doing throughout the region. Depending on how I hire, there might be a little bit additional percentage-wise that I can offer staff. 50 staff. It depends on the hiring.
Other questions on item 7? Yes, sir.
And under other sponsored conferences.
Yeah, so that encompassed expenses related to ACES 7 and our 30th anniversary. Originally, we were doing both ACES in October, combination with our 30th anniversary celebration. So all those expenses related to holding that event. We collected some sponsorships and registration fees the prior fiscal year that supported that overall, the overall event. Then we collected more for the delay moving that event to the February, March timeframe. So those in total encapsulate expenses related to where we held the event, some of the field trips that we held in combination with that event, speakers, we had plenary speakers at the event, and then just general food expenses that we had. That as I mentioned, you originally had categorized our initial budget on all travel services. Just following out here, any of our sponsored conferences that fell under the other expenses. Thank you. Okay. Just want to say, we don't make any money off those conferences. We basically break even, and through the sponsorships as well as additional donations, we're able to fully cover that. We have about 25 to 30,000 left over for publication proceedings from that conference that we anticipate getting with scholarly journal article and like that. We do have some additional budget left over for just publishing the scholarly journal. Thank you.
Anyone else? Is there a motion to accept?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, show it passes unanimously. Item 8, did your budget.
So this is also in your updated agenda packet. So there is a proposal. This is not a necessary thing that we need to do, but we usually, based on the first 6 months of expenses, usually make some adjustments from the initial budget that was passed in the prior year at our August 14, 2021. We're taking that opportunity here just to reflect a little bit of changes in terms of the expenses I just outlined, bring more in line with our final budget is anticipated. The total, I just want to mention that we are actually anticipating close out of some more projects than what we originally factored into the initial start budget. So we're expecting a little bit more revenues on that side, about 3.6 million. 7.9% more than the anticipated initial budget. As I mentioned, in terms of direct personnel expenses, we are actually going to come in a little bit under the delay in hiring. costs and other expenses basically relate to the sponsored conferences event. That's reflecting real world expenses that we anticipated course of holding those events. It's reflecting what we spent the first 6 months of the district that we converted this year. There's some additional printing costs related to State of the Bay report that we're finalizing now. Bring our total printing budget up to about. Lastly, on the expense side, we also received some in kind from the prior fiscal year. Good order, just reflecting that prior fiscal year, kind of this current fiscal year, in addition to what has already been committed by Tampa County, we see a little bit of increase in there. Again, overall contract services and everything in terms of on the expense side, we're anticipating a little bit more than what we factored in our initial budget. 3.6% more in terms of expenses. And at the end of the day, when taking into account revenues and expenditures, our net fund balance is anticipated to be about 2.5, so a slight increase from what we were anticipating. Any of the revenues that we generate are all truly reflecting the expenses rollover in projects that necessarily be reflected. Questions? Approval? Any questions? Second. And second. All those in favor say aye. Item 9, final 2023 USA EPA work plan. So this is an action that we request at each of our May board meetings, and this reflects an application that we submit to EPA for our annual work plan, which reflects work that we anticipate totally funded through our NEP and more Act appropriations to Congress that are matched with their 2021 updated interlocal agreement membership. Again, this is our formal application to EPA region for work that we anticipate through those funding streams. And I think I will sort of preface this discussion and perhaps entertain for the board consideration. Talking first about both action item A and B under agenda item 9, and then have a separate discussion on agenda item 9C. There are two different components of the funding that will come into the program, and two different agreements that we will form. The first, to talk about fiscal year 2023 work plan, we presented a draft at the last February board meeting. That draft, the final work plan that's presented in the package today is pretty much similar to what was presented at the February board meeting, with one exception. One technical project that we received the proposal for the Tampa Bay Environmental Restoration Fund. So your recommendation on funding for that project, do that source of funding. We eliminated that from the work. But in the link to the work plan, if you go basically to page 57, that outlines the funding that is coming into the program from our federal sources. This year, there's actually a slight bump up in appropriation from Congress, about $750,000. That is going to be matched with the interlocal agreement fund from each partner represented. And that funding equates to about 1.5 million in total operating and project costs that we anticipate this year. We move on to page 58 and highlight our overall operating expenses. As I mentioned before, I do have factored in some increases in salary and fringe costs related to what Dr. Hogan mentioned in terms of compensating existing staff, as well as bringing in some additional help in the new fiscal year with any social research scientists. They see any increase over what we anticipated in the work plan this year, 2022. I do have some increases in terms of membership and training for staff, also to support our continued growth of our existing staff as well as new staff that we bring on. And just to note some inflationary costs that we are anticipating for the overall operating. We're anticipating increases in our core liability insurance. We also are experiencing increases in our office rental fees. We see a little bit of a bump there in terms of our office space rental. Everything else is somewhat in line with what we've been prior work. On the technical project side, there are 5 projects that we be funding. Benthic, Seagrass, and hydrologic monitoring is something that we fund each year. It's a long-running Benthic monitoring program that is needed in our management of sediment contaminants throughout the Tampa Bay watershed. We'll also be supporting additional habitat restoration to our habitat master plan implementation project. That's looking at ways to reef restoration as well as other plans. Restoration on properties that are being acquired by partners. There's several examples of work plans identified. We also will be conducting a critical coastal habitat assessment, which is our long-term monitoring of habitats from mangroves, marsh, all the way up to coastal upland at 9 transect sites throughout Tampa Bay. There's 5 natural places for resort sites that we are trying to monitor on every 3 to 5 year time step. So we're dedicated some funding to for plans for that. Those projects. We also will be earmarking some funds to support the next reasonable assurance update for the Tampa Bay Nitrogen Management Consortium as we cover the period 2022 2026. These are 5-year plans that we delivered to DEP and EPA that identify needed nitrogen load reduction in Tampa Bay in order for us to be water quality projects supported of recovery. That has been instrumental in providing reasonable assurance updates on every 5-year time period. That's something we want there. We'll also be supporting a project with satellite imagery to supplement seagrass coverage estimates above and beyond what's conducted by the water management district. The water management district takes aerial photos about every 2 years, but there are satellites overhead almost every day that fly over taking the Tampa Bay. Be able to use that imagery to kind of fill in the gaps in our understanding of particularly where we're been losing seagrass in the upper part of the day. On the community outreach education projects, there's several that are identified this year. We can continue to support about 6 to 7 events for Give a Day for Pay, Give a Day for Pay volunteer work days that occur through the winter and early spring months. There's some new citizen science program implementation that we're considering. This will complement our existing more technical monitoring projects like the critical coastal habitat assessment or the seagrass transit monitoring that we do through our partners and volunteers and research managers within the region. So we want to involve citizens more collecting that information so they can participate in developing the science that guides our management for ecosystem. Several other sites listing digital storytelling projects anticipated, again, to develop more novel ways to communicate science to our stakeholders and citizens throughout the watershed. Animation, we're developing educational curriculum and content kits that could be provided directly to schools related to all our initiatives that we're involved in the industry program. And then, several other ones that I'd like to go through in detail, but I'd be happy to answer any questions. But again, just to bolster some of the social marketing that has been invested in the past prior campaigns, or to bolster the name of the industry program, what we're doing now to achieve a healthy thing. So in total, as I mentioned, we have about 1.5 million dedicated just from work plan funds for our core operating expenses as well as the technical outreach projects. Again, I think just to entertain the discussion, maybe have a discussion on the work plan separately from the bipartisan infrastructure law money. Separately.
Additional questions? Yes, sir.
Thank you. As a new member, very excited about what's going on. want to talk a little bit about the day and what's going into it, just on the projects and talk about everything going today, the focus. Just this past couple of weeks, I was on a tour of the city of Tampa, Alex. Alex and I met at the Resiliency Summit for Regional Planning Council. And we came in, a gentleman from Julie Elijah from Applied Science. I started talking about downloads. And Alex was well, we've been doing that for 30 years. So I asked him to take me on a tour, so I had my staff. I would say what the city of Tampa has done for years and years has been phenomenal. They started out with basic setups. They're more complex now. They treat the sediments going into the day in a tremendous way. One of the things I found very interesting is, I think it's at the Gary Bridge, where they've got the alpha boxes down there for a few years. It's right across from that on the other side, but we're talking about we have a sea bass problem that's surfing. You know, Pasco County, I guess the Hillsborough River is what we figure is our major contribution to the mega funds flowways, but I think there was a discussion at a previous meeting about maybe taking a look at expanding the area as far as where the bays are really affected. I think Pinellas County and Pasco County from the coast, with the flows that are going in, that might want to go on the eastern side for Pinellas going into that bay or affecting the bay with the water flows is something we should be taking a look at. Now, USF is doing some starting work on one of the items here as far as nutrients and all. Now it's on your process, you showed me that USF is actually studying the effects of your alpha boxes as well. Can you talk a little bit about what you're going to be looking at?
Sure. We started the Bath Box program back in 2003. And there was just a conflict in our waterways, like technology improved 50 years. The technology has today. Footprint has allowed us to use that one. The example is heavily built out. So for us to build ponds and capture the nutrients in the pond, we're going to do that. So we look at other technology. This is something footprint allows us to do. So we expanded that program, and by doing so, we wanted to know currently what truly does these buffer boxes provide us by studying USF. So I think by the end of this year, we will have a report from the in reference to, we're studying 4 different locations, 4 different types of platform boxes we have, and we will see which one is working best. What are the benefits of these two? And we do know that there is a benefit of removing trash, stuff like that, but the benefit of sediment reduction and nitrogen phosphorus reduction, how much is really improving. We'll get there.
It was very impressive to well see the improvement all the way through to what they've done. The investment it takes and the maintenance involved with these after the fact really is the most angry about. On item 13.1 coming up, we're going to hear about the humanity protection. Actually, prioritizing the regional implementation of the stormwater controls, including alpha boxes, coming up. And I think it's something that's very critical for us to take a holistic look at everything going on. The red tide almost hit Pasco County, the borders of it, so it's always going to be a factor up and down. So we're going to be looking at what we're doing up and down. I'm going to take every one of our canals, which in the past 10 years, you probably haven't seen Pasco news as much about flooding at all. We've done a lot of things to control the flooding, which has been good to control nutrients going as well. However, there's still more to do. And I'm looking at every one of our inlets that I can help to go in there. We get the treatments in for medical boxes. I was initially going to go to Indian River to go look at what they had done with their giant medical boxes out there. And then at the BD, we had to start talking about this. Well, we got them right here in Tampa Bay. Charlotte's got them, I think St. Pete's got them as well. So I think it's a technology we should include in our work plan as soon as possible. We use the data that I also have later on in the study coming up, but think every bit of nutrient we get and the trash we get ahead of time is a big savings rather than trying to get it later on, plus the effects of it. Recently, Tasco got approved to do some scholarship for a 2-week season. Fernando's like 2 months, citrus is 2 months, we're only 2 weeks. And also still being banned from it. So I think it's very beneficial to the community that we actually keep on pushing forward. I know it's not going to be a topic for now, but maybe it is, so I'm just going to throw it out there. That conversation about including the Gulf, the Gulf of Mexico water flows, the pirate fishery overlook, I think it'd be critical. I don't want to affect a lot of funding things that you have going on here now, but Mr. Chairman, I sit on the Gulf Coast Authority Committee, and there's money that's out there in what they call Part 2. Part 2 is big projects. Huge money that sits on 5 states look at it, 6 federal agencies look at it. And I think if we come up with a plan to go look at the entire bay, inside the bay, around the bay, down again, if you kind of do, not always north south, but from the south up, that we take a look at everything and treat all that water, I think that we will very well received and enable us for even more funding. And the way the state is putting funding out there for water quality, I think it's something to put upon the table.
So when will you assume they're going to
For once, that's currently DEP recommended 20% reduction credit for half a lot. Any additional those don't work. I think when we have a conversation, there's been talk about regional stormwater facilities, stormwater management, at various levels, particularly in problem areas like this. So I think there's opportunity to think about regional approaches to address the stormwater quality, and that is primary source. Correct on that part. If there's regional and funding sources that would support the regional source, all of that are kind of go after. I don't know, segue into bipartisan.
One more folks will be segue. So one of the things I should have mentioned was you just saw the presentation on all the work that was done on the lake, the water smoking today. DOT controls a lot of roadways up and down 19, right? Other roadways as well as the ways today. At one of the lakes, near one of the projects, the lakefront projects, there was a lake that got a ton of trash coming in. DOT, I believe, sponsored 2 or 3 of those battle boxes. So DOT could be a part of the fund as well, up and down.
Yes, and DOT is we voluntarily contribute to our Tampa Bay Nitrogen Management Consortium. And in the past, they have been one of the most significant sponsors to the Tampa Bay Environmental Restoration Fund as well, which is another that we fund that.
The board project, perhaps the next, item 9A meeting, then I can talk about the bipartisan. If it was an extended conversation. All right.
The approval of 1990.
Right.
We have a motion, we have a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, so passed unanimously. 9C. So another component this year, we are set to receive about $909,800 from EPA to the bipartisan law funding. That was passed by Congress in December of last year. So that is going to equate to about $1 million of funding over the next 5 years for $4.5 million coming directly to the program. We're still waiting final EPA guidance on how that funding to be implemented within the region, but we have started to develop concepts with our partners. And initially, we were targeting the 6 presidential priorities identified for that bipartisan infrastructure law, 4 of which we think we could directly address. 2 others we probably address with projects, but they're not here. But most importantly, what's called for investing those dollars efficiently to coordinated and effective partnerships with local, private, state, federal entities. But one is that the dollars equitably, just for you to think that's going to be a big component
two alternatives that we were having conversations with partners was investing in tidal tributary and living shoreline restoration, particularly in underserved communities. So this could very much implement some of the projects that you were talking about in terms of down boxes and other infrastructure, stormwater improvements. An example of this is on the left there is Wayne Creek, so the conceptual design for that stormwater improvement along that Tampa system. Those road there's several creeks that are at the beginning stages of contemplating these enhanced stormwater controls at the county and city level. We've identified those in the table under section 4 as potential project fund under the bipartisan infrastructure law funding. The second is to address some of the aging wastewater infrastructure issues we have throughout the region. There are, again, several municipalities at different stages of support in terms of incentivizing septic sewer conversion or addressing private lateral issues that have been identified in the past couple of years of our municipalities. So there's again a mix of different projects that we have preliminary conversations with partners under that law. When we proposed these concepts to the management board, they recognize that EPA has not provided final guidance yet for that funding source, so they wanted to ensure that we have maximum flexibility in how we can direct that funding. And then I think the biggest concern in terms of the two alternatives is whether or not EPA final guidance says that we can't use those funds to address issues on private homeowners lands, but either like septic issues or private lateral issues. And again, I think there's flexibility in how we can direct some of the things and use those funds to catalyze the different septic programs. And the management board hopefully provided the recommendations here listed in green to not necessarily make a final decision on the exact project, but provide staff flexibility in deciding what the application should look like EPA for this funding source based on where each of the projects might be in terms of the implementation. So we have gotten some preliminary feedback from EPA that they would like proposals for the first 2 years of the bipartisan infrastructure law funding. In that case, we have about 1.8 million direct towards projects that address tidal tributary habitat restoration, living shoreline, as well as aging wastewater infrastructure. And it's just a matter of working with our partners to identify projects that would be ready to go and be ready to utilize those funds immediately as would be directed by Congress and EPA for that fund. So there is a little bit long-winded recommendation from the management board that doesn't direct specific projects, but allows that flexibility and discretion to occur with our application, and we welcome any other conversations with the policy board or to be directed on the use of those funds. We are going to have a recommendation from the Tampa Bay Environmental Restoration Fund for one of a tidal creek restoration proposed to Heber to direct some of the resources for bill funding for that project. But other ones that would make up that 909,000 for 2 years of funding is that for us to be voted for 20 million. We're going to continue to work with partners to identify which projects are ready to go and support them. So again, to answer the question about these alternative section 4 outlines the very, very preliminary areas that this funding could be used to support. And I think from your conversation, Commissioner, we recognize that these dollar amounts are not going to totally fund any one program, but if we could use them to catalyze and initiate some work that we know will have a downstream benefit for the estuary, that's what we've always done as an estuary program. Continue to do with the funding that they're coming to the estuary. So we have to answer any questions on that. Questions? Question?
I was just wondering, what do you expect the final time?
It was imminent back in March. So as soon as they provide the guidance, they're expecting them to turn around the proposal. That's why we're asking for your conceptual
changes to help we can fence came through and I'm good. Our sort of happening. You know, this, you get the shirts. No, all the stuff.
Yeah, so this is a, this bipartisan infrastructure law funding is guaranteed for the next 5 years. Our work plan funding has gone up and down based on Congress appropriations this year, but the next program in general has broad bipartisan support. Our appropriations have actually been going up. We're hopeful that trend will continue and we'll continue to see level, at least level support for the coming years.
Yes, it's not so much the money, it's the regulations that go with it. Any of us that have been on boards that received federal funding the last couple of years, from ARPA and assistance and emergency, those kinds of funds, the regulations come sometimes weeks or months after we get the check, we're sitting there waiting for it. Commissioner Mariano.
I was gonna say, with the project looked at, we did talk about the IB right ahead of time. And do you think the funding for this year in that area, we're having trouble with seagrass, that part of that could be included in putting down boxes in the area, people working with things that.
It was a component of creek restoration stormwater improvement project. That could be part of the sort of treatment process that would be developed through conceptual design.
When your team looks at it,
Yeah, okay. Yeah. And from that tree program point of view, you would want those projects to be considered not only some of the flood control issues that usually those projects entertain, but also the nutrient and associated habitat benefits for fish and wildlife.
Other questions? I know in Pinellas, the tidal tributaries is the exciting part for us, because the opportunities, things we're already doing. And so if we're able to get a little bit more support in some of those, if it meets the criteria, that's a huge bang for our buck there. So, as far as those alternatives, I'm really excited about that. Are there further questions or a motion to approve? We have a motion and a second.
Just to clarify, the motion is for that recommendation.
That's what I took it as. All right. Further discussion? All in favor, say aye. Any opposed, so it passes unanimously. Item number 10, Tampa Bay Environmental Restoration Fund Project. Mike.
After places is a revised handout with the recommendation that we put before you. A request for proposals for the Tampa Bay Environmental Restoration Fund was issued back in January. 12 proposals were received by the March deadline. More than $1.5 million was requested for only $726,000 available. That $726,000 was made available thanks to generous donations from many of you representing organizations in the room, as well as private sector partners, the J. Craig Pruitt Foundation, Jolly Family Foundation, and Publix. Reviewers met in April to discuss their findings with the executive director, and those findings were used to develop the recommendation that's before you today. So there's a funding table that is included in that handout. 8 projects of the 12 that were received are recommended for Tampa Bay Environmental Restoration funding. 6 of those projects are to be managed by the Tampa Bay Estuary Program, and 2 of those projects are to be managed by our managing partner of this program, which is Restore American Estuary. So of those 6 projects that the Tampa Bay Estuary Program will manage, there are 3 projects which are focused on issues of concern in a priority area for us, which is Old Tampa Bay, which is, many of you know, is struggling with both water quality and seagrass. Those projects are an applied research project to look at the potential for low-cost biochar to remediate hiberninium blooms, which is that harmful algae bloom that occurs every summer in that bay segment. Another applied research project to understand the ecological value of Caulerpa, which is the macroalgae that replaced much of the seagrass that was lost in that bay segment. And then a tool developing a green infrastructure tool that is also looking at not only how we reduce nutrients, but how we can address the adverse effects of climate change associated with rainfall and sea level rise, focused on the Sweetwater Creek watershed in Hillsborough County. We also have several projects which are habitat restoration focused, one at Newman Branch Creek in Hillsborough County, and then one project in Manatee County looking at mangrove die-off and Perrigo Preserve. And then finally, there's a project in East Tampa that's looking at nutrient management, best management practices for community gardens in East Tampa. The two projects that Restore America's Estuaries would be managing would be the Fish Hook Spoil Island Restoration Design Project and a web dashboard for Twitter analytics on environmental issues. That second project is one that's building off of some peer review, some work that was published in the peer review literature based on red tide and how you can use Twitter to assess where red tide concentrations in fish kills were extreme and get a better understanding of public sentiment around issues of harmful algae bloom. One project, as Ed mentioned earlier, is actually documented for bipartisan infrastructure law funding, and that's the Little Bayou Creek Design Project located in South St. Petersburg. And then there are three projects that are put on that list with zero funding, so they're not recommended for funding. And that is the Booker Creek Project, which is also in St. Petersburg, a project looking at installing water goats at undetermined locations throughout the watershed, and then a project that was proposed by a private entity on private land, which is Pine Key, also in like that Hillsborough Bay area. So I'm happy to entertain any questions or comments that you have about the individual project proposals. And the staff recommendation is before you. The first part A is to approve the recommended projects, which are included in that table. Second part is to authorize the executive director to enter into an agreement for the 6 projects that the estuary program would manage. And note that some of you may need to abstain based on whether or not your agencies are receiving funding. And then finally, to authorize the executive director to add an additional $25,000 for projects should those funds become available.
Questions?
Yeah, just looking at it, I look at the evaluating total green infrastructure item. I look at the Booker Creek baseline data collection. I prefer Booker Creek compared to the other. Because if we're going to look at doing outside funding, especially with that part 2, looking at what could be done, maybe more beneficial, especially dealing with red tide. Could be more beneficial.
So the Booker Creek project was one that was proposed by the University of South Florida. It was proposed to basically collect additional water quality samples and do outreach throughout the community. They did not actually have any partnership with the city of St. Petersburg in their application, and so the reviewers were concerned that the monitoring that was proposed would be redundant with monitoring that was already ongoing by the city of St. Petersburg, and that it wouldn't actually be engaging with any of the partners who have the ownership and ability to implement projects that would use that data and have it inform a design or restoration project. So that was those are the findings of the review committee and the basis for our recommendation, but we appreciate that others like to weigh in. No, I appreciate it. Listen, I love hearing everybody's thoughts about all these things. I just wanted to give you the.
That's good at following up proposals that were funding this year. Let them know where they can improve and hopefully come back and both of them line with where they.
Yes, sir. The Florida State University study on how would they from Tallahassee?
So they had an explicit partnership with Hillsborough County to use the Hillsborough County data sources for their watershed models. And we'll be working very closely. Basically, they're trying to implement part of the new stormwater manual that Hillsborough County has adopted in their planning. Hillsborough County is looking to pilot green infrastructure projects in that Sweetwater Creek Basin. And so this project was specifically developed with Hillsborough County as a partner, using data, using some of the recommendations from the Climate Science Advisory Panel and the Regional Resiliency Coalition. And then, considering how those confounding factors would help to deal with some of the nutrient loading and other water quality problems that we're seeing from a watershed that drains to whole Tampa.
So this is the partnership with
Hillsborough County is a partner on that. They're not receiving funding, but they are partners.
Yes, sir.
Open the can of worms. I've been asked several times to hold that back. I was told that problem is too large to deal with all the space and bridges. And you can increase the flow of the Tampa Bay. But I just want everybody to look at, bowels of Tampa Bay with other alternatives. So you open it up. That is to increase the flow. But that's been looking at this, that the other is the seagrass. It's not cheap, but it's not.
I think at the August meeting, it might be beneficial to have a presentation on the Old Tampa Bay Actionable Science Grant that we've been working on in partnership with the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission. That project is looking at a suite of management options and sort of what's the information that you all as decision makers need to be able to implement the kinds of projects that would help improve Old Tampa Bay. So I think it would be useful to kind of have some of those discussions, but we agree that it's no one action is going to solve what we're dealing with in Old Tampa Bay right now. There are, the heavy lifts that you're mentioning with respect to the causeways and how we might modify those to increase flow, but there are other alternatives. We know that we haven't seen as much nitrogen load reduction from stormwater in that bay segment as we have in other parts of the bay. So continuing our strategy of reducing nitrogen is an important part of that. We certainly have a lot of freshwater inflow to that portion of the bay from these tidal tributaries, like Ed mentioned, which is why we're kind of focusing on those efforts, and have also done successful pilot projects with the water management district on channels A and G. And we have other work at Roosevelt Channel by the airport. That's why we're supporting some of these applied research projects. And as part of the Actionable Science Grant, we're looking at some different modeling scenarios that would help us better understand the physical components of that bay segment and how those kinds of a variety of different modifications might help us to tackle the challenges that we see there. So I hear you.
I'm a woman, love to see a presentation.
Great.
They can get that. We'll have a presentation actually next week. Outline where we think probably all three would have a bigger bang for the buck in terms of meeting resident science, or increasing the water quality. That was actually where we said, so we could bring sort of consolidated or
I was talking with a group called Sea and Shore, they do Kings Bay Restoration up in Citrus County. And they had done a lot of work up there. They are very good at getting grants with their nonprofit they work with up there. I talked to them about this project as I was driving down there this morning, and they were very employed with the Tampa Bay community around there. I think it'd be good if we maybe reached out to them, consider bringing them in for a presentation. They presented to the Regional Planning Council, and I think it was three other groups after seeing that presentation, brought them forward to see what they could do. I think it'd be helpful to do that, move the project.
Yeah, I think I would appreciate it. I think I would have, but I would love to bring them in for.
They'd love to come. And just a thought, contracting with Florida State, so there's some information, maybe some data that they have to be useful, but with USF being right here and doing projects, working directly with the city of Tampa, with their ballot boxes, with the data they've got already for what's in the bay and what they know. Do you think it's more beneficial using USF, or is just Florida State more capable with what you've got right now for this project?
So through the Tampa Bay Environmental Restoration Fund, it's a competitive grant proposal process. So, I do work with the community to try and, get different partners to provide project ideas. This is just a matter of, this is a project that, they actually proposed this project last year, but they weren't selected for funding. I worked with them to help make the project more competitive this year, and then it was selected this year. But I think that there's a benefit to working with all of the universities throughout the state, as well as others, if that they have that appropriate expertise. So we're always trying to build capacity as an organization. So we want to have students who are upcoming and have expertise in marine sciences, and understand about the issues of the Tampa Bay estuary. They might be going to school in Tallahassee, but they might be from here, or they might move here later. So I don't think that that's necessarily detrimental. I do want to call to your attention, just so you all are aware, I've been noticing a trend in terms of the kinds of applications that we're getting for the Tampa Bay Environmental Restoration Fund. Many of the proposers are from academic institutions. And initially I thought that was because some of our matching policies, they were able to claim match from unrecovered indirect. But we actually addressed that issue this year in the funding guidance, and we still got applications from a number of different universities. So we've partnered. There's a USF project that's being funded this year. There's a new college project that's being funded this year. In the past, we've had projects. There's the Florida Tech project this year. We've had projects with Eckerd. So this will be the first time we've ever partnered with FSU, had UF projects as well. So I think we work with all the educational institutions, but it is interesting to see how many of them are now taking advantage of the Environmental Restoration Fund for applied research opportunities. And just a reminder to you all that this grant program is open to your agencies and your organizations, to implement projects, stormwater control, those kinds of things. They're specifically highlighted as priorities for this grant program. So we encourage you as local governments to apply. Community organizations, nonprofits that you might be aware of are also eligible, and homeowners associations, we help fund your work in the past too. So if you want to see more of these like dirt turning kinds of projects through this fund, which I think we could all agree would be wonderful, I don't think universities are always going to be the best partners for those components. So we really want to do all of them.
I'll say we've got our budget this year higher, right? I don't know how specialized the achievement.
And our job is to try and make it easy for you all. So Jessica and I are always available to help provide counsel along the way. We're not the ones that are making the recommendations to you, so we can help you all make the most competitive application possible.
I'm sorry, Councilmember.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So can you explain the value of that new college web-based national?
Sure. So there are some limitations as we receive federal funding for a significant portion of our outreach budget. To understand public sentiment and to do social science surveys, there are limitations in terms of what we're able to do without going before a given subject research board. And so what that means is we often have to get creative in our funding to understand, have evidence-based practices for communication and outreach. Using social media and big data is one way where the information is anonymized, not directly human subjects research. So we're able to get information about public sentiment that can help us better tailor the communications activities and the kinds of programs that we put together for the region. And so this was actually, this group did an add-on component to a prior TRIP project, which was looking at how to value the effects of the red tide event from 2018 and 2019. And as a part of that, we kind of asked them to look at public sentiment and sort of how the public reacted to red tide. And the way that that grant did that was they used this novel approach to basically scrape tweets, and then they had geotags with them so you could see where people were tweeting about red tide kinds of issues and whether the things they were saying were negative or, you know, if they were environmental or economic concerns, like are people upset that they can't, that you know, wildlife is hurting, or are they upset because their vacation is ruined or they can't go voting, those kinds of things. And so through that project, we saw that there was some value to the information that one could glean from that. And so this project was basically saying we could do this for other issues as well. And so we would work, they would work with a set of stakeholders to kind of determine what are the most sort of top of mind environmental issues for all of the partners that are sitting around this table. And then we would be able to scrape Twitter to sort of understand how people are perceiving these kinds of issues, what their concerns are, if they feel angry, if they, you know, feel supportive of kinds of projects. So we saw value, the reviewers saw value in terms of, you know, helping the estuary program better target resources to particular environmental issues and understand sort of important ways to come at those issues. And so that's sort of the values idea, is that you would sort of get this project that looks at a suite of different issues, and you would kind of understand whether there are knowledge gaps, whether people feel negatively about particular environmental issues, and then we could, as a program, we could develop outreach materials and campaigns that address those in ways that are relevant and meaningful. So it's just another way to try to be evidence-based in our outreach and communications. And so those were the values that we kind of saw as
When I look at the list of other projects, that one kind of just jumps out at me. And the other ones, I see like just a direct action in helping estuary. This just, I don't know, seems, especially because it's focused on Twitter. I mean, I'm on Twitter too. I also have an app for Fish and Wildlife Conservation. Back when we had red tide last year, got very involved with that. It affects red tide. But yeah, trying to understand the value of that, and then I go down, and I look at the value of creek restoration, look at any funding, and that is
So a couple of points. Your comment about only using Twitter is a good one that the reviewers concurred with. It would be nice to have a more comprehensive kind of social media landscape that's pulling together information in that dashboard. And that was one of the requests for additional information that was sent to the proposers. And their response indicated that they could pilot their approach on Twitter and then have, you know, a plan to further develop the web dashboard in ways that could use text-based information from other social media platforms if it's relevant. So that's an appropriate concern, I would say, that Twitter is a narrow set of users. It might not be comprehensive, or you have to be careful in terms of how much that applies to the public writ large. And then I just want to make sure it's really clear, because we're not recommending it for funding for the Tampa Bay Environmental Restoration Fund for Little Bayou, but we're recommending full funding of that project through the bipartisan infrastructure law. So that Little Bayou project, the reviewers agreed it was a project that had merit and ought to be implemented. We just thought we could fully fund it through the bipartisan infrastructure law. And so in that request for additional information that went to city staff and the engineering department, we specifically asked if the city would be amenable to receiving federal funding instead of grant funding to support that work. And they indicated that that would not be a problem, that there wouldn't be any commingling with ARPA funds or other federal funds. So it seemed like the response from the city was positive to that approach.
Thank you.
Sure.
Okay, my question. Give to about 5, 10 issues. You feel like the top issues we need to be looking at. So, do you take those like 5 issues, 3 issues from y'all? And anytime you get ready, do you try to focus all proposals that are addressed one of those issues and then we can, when they respond back to you, and they do this in order to address this issue?
Yes. So
This does seem like it's really everywhere. It's not sitting the whole boat of ours. It is even next time out, but no.
yeah.
Okay, critical. Understand. Yeah. All right.
Sure. No, I just want to, like, I really appreciate that you all engaged so much on these projects, so please don't ever shy away from that. So each year, the Tampa Bay Environmental Restoration Fund, in order for a project to be eligible, it has to be proposed by a public entity and it has to address something in the CCNP. But we do establish priorities and request for proposal each year. So I try and establish 3 priorities for each of our core areas of responsibility. So something, there you go, for water quality, something for habitats and wildlife, and then something for an informed, engaged, responsible community. So we're always working in those 3 broad buckets, and so that can give you a pretty wide spread of projects right there. But we've definitely been focused in terms of water quality projects. We're focused on green infrastructure and Old Tampa Bay kinds of issues. For habitat and wildlife, those priorities change from year to year. But you'll see in there things specifically related to tidal tributaries and tidal circulation, tidal creeks. And then I think that the thing that's driving the kinds of responses in terms of informed, engaged, responsible community, you can scroll down a little bit and trying to understand the best practices about community gardens and small hobby farms. We saw there was a USF project that was explicitly responding to that priority, better understanding the demographic distribution and magnitude of public use and developing strategies to kind of better understand those things. I think that's sort of what the Twitter project was trying to respond to. And then we were hoping to get more public education around fertilizer use. So anyways, we do this every year, and I'm happy to present these priorities at the board meetings in the future, so it's clear what the RFP was requesting and just in terms of the projects that were selected. This is also included in the scoring criteria from the review committee, and so people, give scores associated with whether or not a project is responsive to one of those particular priorities.
Yes, sir. Well, that's USF. We have a meeting with John Hopkins. USF. Talk about this. Texas came up with the health stuff. They put a lot of time concerned about what we see in the way of bacteria. So it's changing dramatically. What did this get out of last year? I think it was a record number of bacteria. And there's several people died, but one of the know that. And if you know that, that issue problem without issue space to go. future. So far, I think house people put up ground. Got no problem. Seems to me it is a major issue. I would say it's about the major. Climate change, where you want to use one, it's happening. It's facing, what is on union still. I would like to see more money, but the whole Tuesday. I can give us suggestions.
There are several people over, even after development, putting the river water. Partner participate in the conflict assessment. We also fund our exploratory research. We just received the final report of that project. Those are emerging issues that we identified in our CCP related to bacterial concerns that we want. We're building additional partnerships with the ongoing migrate or better season we get bacteria that relate to health.
The red dot. I'll be fine.
This is all good stuff.
Yeah, we're in the process of updating the CCMP, so making sure that that's appropriately conveyed in the research priorities and in the actions. That's the kind of feedback we need. That's great.
As Maya mentioned, there are certain priorities that we are not highlighting at all. I think the opportunity to bring back to the board what we should be emphasizing priorities we are funding that. We're pretty fun of developing it for next. And from there, we can work with the different departments that we can't wait to into our work line directly or just with the local partners. We can want to do that. Further questions or is there a motion for approval?
So moved. I think put it in discussion.
Second. Is there a second? Second, thanks, Jeff. Further discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed, so passes unanimously. Item number 11, approval of change of bank insurance. We go to page 18 of the packet, basically an overview of what we're proposing in terms of changing our banking relationship to Finance First Bank. We provided some additional background material from presentations that they developed for outline their activities, their sustainability initiatives, their objectives to become a certified B corporation, as well as we see full certification from the state as a qualified public depository. That was the holdup in terms of making this a formal agenda item action. We're then receiving that certification and received it right before the last board meeting in February. So we're bringing this to the board's attention for your official approval to initiate that banking switch for benefits that were outlined at the beginning and prior board meeting and to align with some of the sustainability initiatives that we support, renewable energy, as well as some of the climate change initiatives that we've outlined as the CCMP. And secondarily, to earn additional interest income from our holdings within that bank or above and beyond what we currently get. Some questions you might have on that switch, and or engaged our accounting service provider, like that we've been talking about that. It'll probably be about a 2-month process to fully make that switch. Questions?
So,
Was there a motion to approve? Motion and second, further questions, discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? So passes unanimously. That concludes our action items. Executive Director staff report. Sure.
Yes, to bring the board up to date on what I alluded to at the beginning, in terms of our quarterly finance report, as I mentioned. Fortunately, we did have one staff resignation this past quarter, so we were down to 6 full-time staff. To that resignation, we've been fairly stretched thin on the amount of types of projects that we were managing. But I really appreciate the staff willingness to sort of reorganize your current conditions, take on additional work with that staff. Sort of the delay in hiring on new staff was something that I was had to deal with in terms of tax contributions that were not being paid for 3 of our existing employees, and that was management oversight and working with our accounting service providers to pay 3 new employees that were properly signed up to our retirement system. We've since corrected that with our retirement system. It's one of the outstanding issues we're still dealing with one employee had a correct social security number in our payroll system. It's still something we're dealing with administratively. But at this point, we're trying to rectify it as best we can. The issue with them not having contributions taken from the retirement system is that there was both an employee and employer share that we needed to make up in terms of payments in early April. That was $40,000 contribution that we had to make in terms of our salary bridge budget. That's why we were a little bit over in terms of our quarterly to work in terms of salary bridge because we make up contributions that in order not to create any additional hardships for employees, we also provided an option for the employee share to pay back over time. That's the program. No interest, but in terms of the payment program, so they would have to make a phone call payment to that first contribution. As I mentioned, we've now got them into the water retirement system, identified sort of issues and breakdown communications that occurred between our accounting service providers and our payroll services, so that as we bring more new staff, that this issue happens. As I mentioned, there are 2 additional staff hires that I would like to do before the end of this year, having all these issues ironed out, making sure that we get enough selling spring budget to allow for those 2 new staff hires for the delay. We're looking to hire a replacement for the staff resignation that we had over the past quarter. We've been bringing on asset registration colleges. Also looking for office assistant, administrative assistant to take over some of the administrative duties because we've been since reorganized. This was now taking over something. So again, we're still in this staffing transition in terms of prior retirements, having a lot of new staff on board and working through and ironing out some of these other issues that have surfaced with the resignation. But I wanted to bring it fully to the board's attention and answer questions that you might have in terms of the past contributions that were made on behalf of employees. And again, it's not something that I was happy to kind of explain to the employees that was occurring, but we want to fix it as we can, and that's what we're doing now with our county system. I'll pause there and see if there's any specific questions on that, but there are other items that I'd like to see on the. Okay. I think, as I mentioned, I want to, again, give a lot of credit to my staff in a challenging quarter in terms of the workload and some of the events that had to be a little bit short. They've been nothing but fantastic in terms of trying to accommodate that industry. share a model that indicates including Tampa development online platform. That's actually recognized. Also want to say Sheila has stepped up to the plate and taken over a lot more of the restoration and science initiatives for the program. She is the key program scientist and interface mostly with the key in terms of payment grant activities, which is also taking over the part geometric monitoring initiative and helping out with that. The next Jessica has taken over the keeper of duty and we bring on a new office. On the express appreciate their patience as we review them. The other thing that I want to mention.
Sure. If you thought about ever taking on interns, or in the field that might want to, that could maybe take some of the stress off.
Yeah, we got a meeting next week with a mentor, he does a mentor that we're looking to bring forward to help us out with something like that. Also want to mention at last week's board meeting that the EDC meeting, we also were able to recognize Tom Ashton as a long-time management board chair that changed in Tampa Bay. 35 plus years on environmental issues, taking over some of the water quality testing monitoring programs. He's been instrumental to our overall management conference. It's a technical project that we keep involved in. But I just want to make mention of that. I think it's official date is at the end of the month, but I'm off right now. Last but not least, also want to just mention that both Jessica and Sheila were able to attend this year's Crossway Memorial Fishing Tournament, and again this year Crossway was able to recognize us by $25,000 for projects that was in fish and wildlife resources over Tampa Bay. The check we received last year was actually put back into artificial development that county for. You don't have a funding obligation for these donations just yet. Just wanted to recognize that and give them thanks. You drill it.
And actually, there might be more money coming. A friend of mine.
Awesome. But standing here, yeah, we've exceeded in terms of donations to the program and usually how we target those big donations or direct projects that we know are trying to partners or meeting into our either or being in grant or campaign. But it just gives a little bit more resources implement activities that we continue to appreciate the program. One last update. We are have been contacted by Suncoast Water Keeper and the City of Bradenton. There's a pending consent decree that would just direct resources to that straight program. As has been done in the past, this litigation for environmental protection of projects that would improve the water quality conditions at that site and lower Tampa Bay region and Northern Rivers. So if that decree is finalized, then we're expecting to receive a little over $200,000 for projects that support this initiative. Some preliminary conversations we've had with folks involved in that litigation. I think there are a lot of initiatives focused on moisture restoration and management river that we love to support. We don't necessarily need to be middlemen speaking to those funds, but the Before we get into the board discussion on the new agenda item, I just wanted to mention that we did successfully hold the 7th area scientific information symposium that I'm saying from February 28th, March 4th. We had some great attendance at that meeting, 290 attendees, both virtually and in person. I think there's about 194, 96 people that were actually attended in person. 78 different presentations, street workshops, and really this is an opportunity for the region to come together and talk about the priority issues facing next-based continued restoration region. So there were 13 session topics of that 4-day period, kind of highlight points that new management initiatives are going to be needed in the future. You need to have healthy campus. As I mentioned, what we typically have done is formalize all of the presentations to a proceeding document so that we have a record of what occurred during each event. As I mentioned, this is the 7th area scientific information symposium going all the way back to 1982 was the first one. So again, it's a long-term record of our progression, how we probably have had progress different science research and restoration. So just wanted to briefly mention that, but recognize that we also have another discussion about item 13.1. If you all have any questions on cases? So the next agenda item is 13.1, this is the new agenda item. There's 2 topics of discussion that board members requested to have at this board meeting. I actually brought this up at the national board. There's currently a U.S. House Resolution 4946 proposed by Congressman Mangrove, Canada, that would officially list the West Indian humanity as an endangered species. This was discussed at the board meeting. The management board meeting on Friday. There's no concern, Research and Restoration Act, so it's identified as CCP. There was some discussion of great consideration for this listing. But management board expressed, we should be targeting the root cause of why we're seeing decline in the population. Now I think about 7,500 around the state. And primarily because of lack of security resources on the coast. So again, our actions that are supportive of improving water quality percentage of maintaining seagrass beds are permanent for the same population and on the west coast. I know there's additional actions like additional looking at warm water refuges throughout the state of Florida. There's some additional actions that need to support either spring restoration or humanity, spring environment, within our budget by the humanity. So again, I think there's support from that work. I'll stop there.
So this was my item that I asked Congressman Buchanan is our representative down in Manatee County, and I represent Manatee County. So we felt as a board that it was important for us to support this unit to DC. A couple weeks ago, it was on our federal legislative priority list, and virtually every member that we spoke with was supportive of it. Congressman Buchanan has 29 co-sponsors, 20 of which are for delegation. And Stubby, Sarasota, the heart of the moment, he has not signed on for total support of the work. He said the plan to sign on. So the ask is that we essentially send a letter to board delegation asking them to support it. Virtually all of them already are. It's not, we don't want to get political, obviously, but I don't think this is overly at all. It's bipartisan support. And as Director said, even though it's a slam dunk issue, it is nice for the DC to sort of hear from their constituents, hear from organizations like this that we are supporting these things and encourage these things along. And that was essentially the basis of my request.
I'll second that. That's a motion.
Oh, that's been a motion to approve.
We have a motion and a second. Is there further discussion?
So,
Are we, I guess my question is, we are supporting the program for the issue of the land use protection.
So it's a bill to put the West Manatee back on the communities list, and simply asking for us to direct to pen a letter to the board of delegation in support of that.
Other questions?
Let me just say one thing.
Yes, sir.
I'm in favor. That is the most toughest law that I'm going to say. Shut down. Tampa, Holland, West Coast, yes. It's something that we need to be looking at root cause. We report a lot that everybody's looking into this thing. Everybody's pursuing to get it protected. So it creates a lot of things. We got to do something, but we need to look at what causes it. That's what happens. I had 291 lawsuits. That one had been reauthorized years ago.
I totally agree with you. I agree. I spent time in Alaska and for those friends, coastal Alaska, lost their livelihood. They were contempt. Exactly what we're talking about. I agree there are reforms that should be made to the law. And we should have a further discussion on root causes. That's sort of a separate. And when the West Manatee was on the endangered species list, ultimately did help with the recovery dramatically.
Yes, sir.
Sure. What exactly is the bill do?
Well, essentially, once it becomes an endangered species again, it's entitled to all the protections of the endangered species. Which is not correct.
What would some of the protections be?
Open up the endangered species act, it's like a phone.
But for example, if Robert West let's go to the Tampa, let's cut through, but we do it. On the right way, problem, put in some restrictions on speed. Chips, walk that. They end up with dog squad. So it is, well, it's affecting that species. You have to take a look at it. Both are getting, soon both are getting 10,000. Yeah, we have to look at it. So, yeah. 5 miles. It's a tough law, but it's a Florida law. It's a law about species. I think we should. Let me just say that. Sure. 16 years.
And I respect your views on the strength of the law.
But I think it's.
The points you bring out are some of my first reaction is, support it, but I worry about what other effects. I would like to see a presentation on what it's going to do, what things could affect, it's going to affect just voting with just receive title.
Yeah, I think, if you're listening, the development management plan to make sure the population, that the impacts probably in our area would be on voting impact. Above and beyond that, issues related to secret laws, in these goods, but, our thing would be that we would want to support that population. And I think that would be developed as part of listening to.
So part of the thing, we've got to focus on you guys and the next topic, and do the right thing with that. And get into the root causes of what's causing the secret response. I think our focus would be better served to throw in where you can actually affect voting, going in and out of different channels, whatever, that if I get a 2-mile channel to get off the Gulf, and all of a sudden I can't go at a certain speed, I can drop it down, I can be worried about this. It's going to affect a lot of quality of life, really no benefit. So I'd like to get more information to before I support it today.
You get it, but like it's a demand plan. Wow. Probably 2 years, 3 years, 3 years. And then any action takes it. You have to do consultation. You get into it. You take little actions, and you take action based on consultation with your party and feedback.
It may be full of that in general, but it was any trouble dealing with the Army program in Tanzania. They have input, but they can do it. They have to be better process, maybe some of the things that they'll put on.
Conversation. I think a lot of past work in this program is going to be coalition, going with some voting impact issues, and that resulted in several areas for our county. So there's already, for these conversations that are already taking place, for the review voting impact on humanity, specifically in our area, whether or not there's additional ones being proposed to enhance this thing. I don't know if it would come to development plan, but that's been 20, 30 conversations within the region on existing voting that have already been implemented. Majority of the county. I don't know how much more would be proposed. There's certainly issues in terms of if there's impact related to I haven't heard that that's a primary source of something that in our vote. All right. Further questions? We have a motion in a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? So it passes unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, sir. Hey, what's next? So this is a follow-up conversation with Commissioner Mangrove. We're kind of talking about what we need to do. Primary source of future looking at about 64% of the total nitrogen nutrients that affect our water quality emanate from stormwater sources. And many of the stormwater regulations that are on the books do have both a water quantity and water quality aspect to them. But a lot of times the water quality benefits are that very good best management practices. So, from the standpoint of our watersheds continue to urbanize, continue to have stormwater with little amount of area and opportunity to implement some of these projects. I need to think about this proactively, in my opinion, on how we address the stormwater issue. You heard our legacy management strategy for Tampa Bay, stormwater issues. And really, it's just a matter of building that support for and identifying areas where these larger projects can be implemented that will have significant closure. And there, as I mentioned, diminishing opportunities for that with the watershed that we developed around. I'm throwing that out there to start this conversation, but we have various sources of funding that we're trying to target for stormwater issues. The priority right now is within the Tampa Bay watershed because that's where we're not meeting water quality criteria for the CRAS. So if there's ways that we can build a partnership coalition to that program, we're willing to entertain that to catalyze that work. There are several projects that we are engaged in actively right now. Channel 5, Roosevelt Basin, we're looking to renewable where some additional habitat restoration on that satellite system, and stormwater into the federal boundary and break these for airport. We're all supporting technical design for upgrades to that Rocky Point Golf Course and parcel and by the National Airport on the and to adhere to our support the Tampa Bay Environmental Restoration Fund supporting the infrastructure identifying green infrastructure opportunities. And hopefully that could be also applied broadly around the country. So again, any work that we can do through this program partnership to catalyze these efforts, we're supportive of it. When you're working with on common continuing great momentum around this issue. It is the primary one that we that is the other one. Yes, sir. I've been in the city for a long time, so I'd like to ask the question, what other counties or our people have to make that we have an implementation period of not allowing fertilization. What other counties that our people have to make that does that too? Because I know we do, I think I know it does, but I don't know if it does the county. So
They do.
to just ask. So this would be a great thing to see if anything change next year, because our biggest concern for us was those were rivers and stuff that come down from the county that affects our system. So that would be a little thing. I don't know if we can improve reduction of nitrogen costs. Yeah, that's also integrated for our prior for these off-channel areas are for the next opportunities, I think. Alliance with some of our Cattle Creek restoration efforts. Work for restoration. Smaller communities. Valuable fish and wildlife habitat. But anyway, that we can improve the floodplain area in those satellite systems, create additional attenuation. Those are projects that we're trying to do. That build funding some of the work that we might increase in other areas, doing increase another example. I think that's where we're trying to sort of move and catalyze not only with the stormwater, but also trying to create some way. Yes, ma'am.
I can talk about building some momentum, and I don't, I don't really have to describe what, building a partnership coalition and putting larger projects, but I think about the little things that we can do at a municipal level. We had a sustainability conference about 2 years ago, just before we were and gave away windows. And talking about mutual info, actually, stormwater. I think we can include hotels can have a tree planting goal. We can incentivize using plants. You know, we can do education programs on, we can do that. We have sustainability conference every year that the city puts on the sustainability director. And so those little things, and I think if we talk about building some awareness and momentum, I think those things are great.
Just the private fund, the individual actions that those individual partners, if their interest is formalized, in specific action in our updates that will put a flag and we'll try to achieve, but also allow us to bring resources for targeting. So this is just receiving the input to express the interest of our volunteers. Capitalize for more control. That's what we're doing. The first action that we can do is update our CCP that reflect the goals of all the municipalities. We can look at that from more of a comprehensive ownership approach, how we think all those different goals, CRP projects together, one body, and that's something that we. No, this is part of the process of gathering that information.
We'll take your ideas whenever we can get them.
I don't know if National County has super strong with this on the fertilizer, but I'm willing to check into it. If not, Mike, can you send me
Absolutely.
what was passed, and I can pick that, we'll look at that.
Yeah, I believe your ordinance is the state model ordinance, and so there are some things that you're not preempted from doing that you could strengthen it, particularly in the summertime, and I'd be very excited for.
We probably get together on it. We actually just passed a resolution supporting both fertilizers. And it's just like so many things going on in the meeting coming up, we can have a further discussion, but we'll bring it forward. We haven't done it.
And Alex, just a quick comment. Councilmember Citro has reached out to us several times. He's very interested in some of the stormwater, the ditches that have been channelized that go discharge in Cypress Point Park. And he's interested in some potential water quality and habitat improvements there. So for your information.
Thank you. But I have another one. Recently, the third, I don't know, they talked to any of you all about how environmentally friendly using dirt instead of sod. And they're giving it, that, oh, you don't have fertilizer. I don't know.
Artificial turf. Artificial turf?
Yes.
Yeah.
So I don't know if anyone has been approached by the turf, but that's a big push now in Tampa, that these folks say, well, you don't have to fertilize ever again. Yes, I think it's what it's right, because we can. But my point is, environmentally friendly. So I don't know how the technology, how the it truly is technologically and environmentally friendly. So I don't know if there's an opportunity to look at it, see what can be provided to us, and you know what, do we like it or do we not like it? Is it good? Is it not?
I do think you're right that it's a trend right now, and I think it'd be something that's appropriate to bring to the agency management, because they tend to work on these more like issues that are more development related, and then perhaps there might be like a research partnership, but I do think a discussion on there could be interesting, so I'll make sure to reach out to Alana Todd with the Regional Planning Council, see if she can bring this issue forward.
Yeah, we better push back. It is not right. The issue is just cost. It was astronomical. Yeah, I heard from Safety Beach, and they're saying that they have not allowed you to at all. Real, yeah, they
you're balancing all sorts of trade-offs. So there's water use, fertilizer use, there's infiltration, there's plastics, there's soil health, there's a whole lot of factors to consider. So it's probably good for some and, yeah.
All I think about is the Brady Bunch back here. What else do you need from us?
So this is the opportunity for this start this conversation.
Commissioner?
So in further of the conversations, I think you talked about already. I think there's a great opportunity here to expand the scope of the conversation. I think there's a lot of great benefits to it. But I don't think put the picture up where they show the baffle boxes in Tampa, and then you can kind of go across and see on the other side of the water at the end. So it's kind of hard to see the map, but what I think I saw is you can actually look at the baffle boxes on the side of Tampa, on the side of the bay with candy bridges, with its baffle boxes. And the seagrass is fine there. It's on the other side of the bay, the other side of the candy. It doesn't have baffle boxes. Where it is probably seagrass in the neighborhood. So
2 minutes. The map on the right shows where the city of Tampa has baffle boxes installed, and the map on the left, which shows the area you're discussing, it's kind of hard to see lighting, where baffle boxes have been installed on the Pinellas side.
So if you look at that issue, especially those baffle boxes work on one side of the bridge really well. Then the information shows that there's no baffle box on the other side. It might be an easy first solution to go around. Take outside of the thing, hopefully improve the seagrass. With the way water flows down from north to south, the water comes down. Anything going from right tide, it goes to Pinellas County, National County, et cetera, all the way down to Manatee County, and I think Manatee, some of the water actually goes from Manatee up as well. So we're all connecting with the water, with the bay, sometimes not all the way in, but it's all connected. The more water quality treatment we can do, and I think, again, I'm a big fan, learn about these, how effective they are. That is something I think if we go with a large approach to the region, can make this whole day better. Let's face it, when you have a red tide that affects all the beaches in Pinellas County, Manatee County, et cetera, people look at that, that kills our economy. It also kills a lot of sea life in our own quality every step of the way down. So if these baffle boxes do work and we can treat the water up and down all the way along the coast as well as inside the bay, I think it's something worthwhile for this group to take a look at, especially when there's so much funding in water between the feds and the state and again, part two money in the Gulf Consortium, untapped from what I know in our area. There's a huge opportunity for us to get. So we can take advantage of all the money that's out there on both our water quality and really make a difference in our region.
So is it, and I'm outside my area, but is it the baffle boxes are effective to a degree, not as effective as the other, the train you mentioned, but that takes more space to land the baffle boxes to be effective. You don't have it, that's basic, just the, where am I missing?
So let me speak at a turn. The baffle boxes are usually
And elevation.
not put the baffle box. Try it. You can put it in the low line where that is. Watch it back up. So we learned that the hard way. So we're there to elevate. You can. Usually these things are pretty big. So I would think that you have to have you need to be around elevation 10. You can't put it in elevation 3 or 4 right on the coastline because then it's going to wash out. So what we've learned is all the baffle boxes that we put in are offline from the system. So they're not affected by existing box culture.
Further discussion?
I think moving forward, we that we can propose for this regional code that we have water quality. Look at stronger language policy. The management board did mention that individually municipalities are implementing GIP third one. But if that program can aid and identify what the nutrient reduction benefits from those things are, we can further drive projects that are not so focused on one technology, but also looking at treatment trains that address multiple pollutants, especially in the old tank too, which I think that's what I think that's what I'm hearing from the both management board and policy board discussion. I think we could strengthen that this season. That, as I mentioned, hopefully provide us an empathy to further going and catalyze. Not that we can't do that now, but yeah, we need to partner ideas and concepts to come forward.
And I think it's to use every tool in the box. For the back box is appropriate, great, or not, obviously not. But then to Jack's point of to explore every option, if someone wants to fund battle boxes, then we want to do battle boxes every place it's appropriate and get that money. And wherever the, where the funding is so critical, and there's opportunity to grab it at every. Yes, sir.
Just mentioned, so in the city of St. Petersburg, especially the south of we now, which is a state reserve, we have, it's a very flood prone area that there are 4 acres, which is geographically is a bowl. We don't call them apple boxes, but we call them stormwater vaults. We have many of those areas that have backflow around. We don't have especially at night, and don't have a vacuum out into the neighborhood. We've got 2 neighborhoods right there on that side of the bay. 4 acres is a very flood prone area. Just to the north of that is Riviera Bay that is adjacent to the city of St. Petersburg is getting ready to make some large increases to our stormwater, which is the rest of our stormwater. That we are in the final stages of crafting out a stormwater master plan to address some of these issues. Commissioner Mariano, I don't know. Apple box is kind of the same thing as a stormwater vault. It kind of sounds like it is.
The apple box term is something I've just come across. Sets up with 3 boxes where it takes the flow in of the first box. It takes a lot of sediment on the second box. It takes a little bit less, and the third box is almost nothing. So it sounds like a wall. Up on top, it's streams that actually collect the trash. And the vacuum truck properly located as well, you get in there, suck it all out, bring it all out, and you can remove what is fixed in that. So it sounds like it, and I'm not locked into the term apple boxes, or even with the dust technology, you can train them better. I don't care what the technology is, whatever works, I think we should be doing. Up on there's a map right there that kind of shows you boundaries in the red line. Inside the red is where the boundaries are for the estuary program. If you look out, Pasco County probably is the Hillsborough River coming down. Our primary thing, and I'll do whatever we can along that way to kind of do those treatments as we go forward, because I think it's important. But as far as what I look at is along the coast, like all the canals Pinellas County from, let's say, about halfway down is not part of this. And if we're gonna get stormwater sediments, nutrients that going into the bedding, into the Gulf of Mexico, it's gonna move its way down to the mountain bay, and on a tidal things it pulls it in. It affects down to the south end too, the water's moving up. So when I say, I think it's important to look at not only inside of this area is right now, but if you go outside that, there's so many more opportunities to improve all the water quality out to the front of the Gulf, which is a factor in everything we do. So that would take be a big move by policy of this board to take a look at doing that. I'm not suggesting do it like today, but I think it should be a big full topic to go, let's go study what the benefits are, think about what limitations you might want to see as a member. But I think there's tremendous benefit for all of us working together as a region to go get some other outside money to be on there as well. And I'm fully supportive of doing everything we can to treat right inside it, but I think there's a big picture. Taking the outside would be even more benefit.
All of the conversations we had in February, and what we're fighting for, and expect for library, but that's good, like, what, Brian, some updates on that area.
And you go further, like National County, we've got strong utility fees, $100 a household, going up and down. We've talked about this at the board as far as knowing that boxes, other treatment areas would be expensive to maintain or to some degree. We're looking to do it up and down on both. Every single canal going on, we've got certain flowways where actually takes the water comes off the street from US 19, slips down through, goes to a neighborhood, and then dumps right into the pump. Right into a canal. Guess what? Most of our silts are on the canals, right with all those drains are. So we knew we could make some improvements with proper levels, et cetera. We're going to go do it, but I think we all work together as well between DOT money, SWIFT money, get the other pot money, and all the state federal money. There's a huge opportunity to move everything up. Now, we didn't get it affected by red tide last year, but we're close. And if our water's better, and else water better, and it's water better, it's only gonna help all of us. So I don't know what the best way to take it.
Yeah, I think the UTAC meeting in the conversation, hopefully, that we're looking how we incorporate those areas in our next annual meeting on the 2027 tax rate. They're interested in you at that time. That recommendation board, I'm all for that's that.
And for regional partnership opportunities like you're describing, particularly through like the Pot 2 Restore funding, there's no reason that you have to pursue the estuary program. You can work your other regional partnerships, which are larger and do incorporate those areas too. So like the regional planning council, or other opportunities in that time frame, it's not as aggressive as what you're.
Well, I'll say this, like I said, with all the money out there, with all the money, you've got governor campaigning to go fix water quality, putting money into it, like state legislators putting money in, the feds are jumping into it right now. When the consortium was first formed, that was after the inception. The biggest talk was the money going to infrastructure. That's what they're looking at. They want to see the people that are right here in the mix of the water line, not just cities going for this. Cities have the estuary carries a heavy weight. So if we're going to go to Pot 2 money as a county, I don't think they get a chance. There's 3 counties, 4 counties, I don't think they get a chance. But as an estuary, you got a shot to get that money. You've got 5 states, you've got 6 federal agencies looking at that money. That money's untapped as far as I can see far. There's a huge opportunity, but it's going to take the region. I think the estuary is the lead agency saying, here's what we want to go do. Here's how we're going to water in the Gulf of Mexico. It's all about restoring the Gulf of Mexico to the best we can. Water quality is huge. Leveraging the funds is huge. So we got SWIFT to the board, FDOT to the board, all the counties involved, all the cities involved, and this legislation can continue in the region, is in this room. We've got opportunity, but we got to pull it all together. So I know it was outside of what we're doing, and maybe we're going to do it to 27, but the opportunity in front of us now is go get the money that's out. And then you can limit it as you go forward and say, look, outside monies that we have coming in, the money we have coming in right now, we're not going to affect the internal bay. But if we can get the outside monies eventually that we haven't got yet, then let that money go to benefit the rest of South Central area. But you got to expand your area.
When we talked about it in February, we did a snapshot poll. It wasn't very scientific, but a snapshot poll of where the board members felt like. I don't remember exactly. I think there was interest in looking at it, but not today. It was kind of what I remember. I don't know how laborious it is for us to do an evaluation, what that means as far as the interlocal agreements, the funding formula. Well, I don't know how laborious that is for you all to do, so that we could do an evaluation of the pluses and minuses.
Yeah, I follow up with the survey conversation with the need to bring that information to our team. So that was a continuation of what the board recommendation was. We're still, I don't think, complete by it at that point of increasing the geographic boundary. But there are steps that we can take to look at that in the future. And I think the next opportunity that was now for the board during that major update in the first campaign. That's probably not something you want to hear in terms of how far off that might be, but when we're making applications for this regional approach, it wouldn't necessarily be for improvement to the open equity or existing. We have no jurisdiction outside of that. I think that's why I was discussing that there are other regional partners that we certainly throw our hat in and be like to partner on, involve those geographic areas that you have interest in implementing some of those homeowner controls. And we have done that in the past in terms of possibly other projects. And I'd be happy to explore that under get additional stormwater controls that could be implemented around the not just the geographic extent of the current district.
So I mean, say the same thing over and over again, but I think if you take a look at it, and to protect everybody's funding that's in place that you get for what you're getting now, so that's one thing. But literally that part two money that's out there, other federal money that's out there, other state money that's out there, if you do some type of extension, maybe this primary estuary or secondary estuary, if you want to call it how you want to phrase it, but it's under one umbrella, and that money's going to come from outside sources. I would think anyone would put an objection to it because you're going to try to get more funding from the same area, just to get the other boundaries to it. So not to affect what's going on, and literally, the great work at I saw the city in Tampa. You know, I haven't seen the balls yet or anything else, but I know there's other work that's been done in the area, and it makes sense. We got it. It's just an opportunity to get more money than you got to get now. So whatever you want to bring it forward, whatever ideas, I'm open to ideas to try to make it work. I just want to see us take advantage of the opportunity to get the funding in place, the water quality is so important to us and to the minutes.
Hearing conversation, you have to probably enter a logic that would be pleased about represented by all of our.
So it's not what's going to happen. However we need to do it, money out to what's going on. Okay, how we do it, it's just go out. All right.
Are we on to the last report?
Yeah. One more. That's it. Oh. All right, 14.
All right, so in your package, you'll see there's a screenshot of the dashboard with a hyperlink that you can follow if you'd like to dive deeper into all of the many projects that the Actionable program is working on to improve the health of the bay and the watershed. We also have a couple of different reports in here from the Technical Advisory Committee and the Community Advisory Committee. And there you can see all of the technical publications, presentations, peer-reviewed publications that have been conducted over the last quarter, as well as all of the volunteer hours and interactions with the media that have been going on behalf of the program. watershed for that quarter. So a number of different activities, and we're seeing great dividends for all of that work. There's also some of the numbers for our social media and our communications platform. So if you're interested in that, please take a look at that report. And then finally, our next meeting is scheduled for August 19th, right here in the building.
All right. Anything else? Anything else we can do? Yes, sir.
Just like to say, it's my first meeting in several years. I'm going to Stacy and I were talking a letter a long time ago. But I want to say, Ed, your professional has been great. Maya, Sheila, you guys are awesome. Your responses back to the questions are fun. I just think it's very impressive. So I look forward to working with all of you. Thank you.
We appreciate you being here and getting involved. Thank you very much. All right, we are adjourned.